All right, y'all, forgive my voice. I just woke up not too long ago. Little groggy here, but I have to give you about 417 updates in regards to the Russian war on Ukraine. This is going to take a while, but it's all important. I want to update you on everything that's been going on, including the most recent development, which is absolutely terrifying. So let's start here. Global Markets Forum says Taiwan Defense Ministry says 9 Chinese Air Force planes entered its air defense zone on Thursday. So, as predicted, I told you that you're going to have China eyeing Taiwan as a result of Russia invading Ukraine and basically trying to say, this is ours again, thank you very much. And it's unfolding. You know, they're testing their limits. They know that the world is focused on Ukraine right now. So, you know, why not do some aerial threats over Taiwan? That's exactly what we're seeing. You're going to see there's other iterations of this too. There's the Western iteration of this when nobody's paying attention. The U.S. bombed Somalia. There's more bombing going on in Yemen. We'll get to that a little bit later. Then you have somebody affiliated with Chinese state media saying, get used to it. There may be more PLO aircraft fly there tomorrow. Yeah, that's not going to stop. So there's been a lot of protests now in Russia, in Moscow and in St. Petersburg. Look at the size of anti-war protesters in St. Petersburg. Wow. Now you could see so many people there. I'm not going to play the video here. I don't want to get copyrighted. But this is a very welcome sign. Putin did not do a propaganda campaign that was robust enough before invading Ukraine. And so many people in the population in Russia are not buying it at all. And that obviously is a very welcome development. Breaking, Ukraine's Interior Ministry says men between the ages of 18 and 60 are banned from leaving the country. So, I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion or a hot take right now, but I don't think I like this, man. Look, I get it. Like, I understand why they're doing it, but the idea of forcing people into the military, even if it's for the most noble of goals, it strikes me as a bridge too far. I'll leave it up to you guys to determine whether or not that's a fair opinion of mine at this moment, but nonetheless, that's how I feel. Let's continue. This is more on the protesters. Anti-war protesters in downtown Moscow, despite police crackdown, at least 1,762 people have been detained. Now, this was as of, last night or 2 nights ago, so I'm sure that the number has increased even more. But it can't be overstated, the phenomenal bravery of these people. Because understand something, at least on paper in the U.S., we have freedom of speech and freedom to protest, free assembly. And in Russia, I mean, Putin doesn't even hide the fact that he's an authoritarian. And so these people are risking not just being jailed, but maybe even worse. So, would I have the balls to be out there in the streets knowing that, doing something like this could potentially end your life? At the very least, to lead to a lot of time behind bars? I'd like to think I'd be brave enough to do it, but I really don't know. But so all of these people are just absolute heroes. And by the way, this shows you yet again, you cannot blame just regular Russian citizens and civilians for the actions of a corrupt authoritarian government. They are not one and the same. In fact, they are very, very, very different. Russian billionaires lose $39 billion in a day on Ukraine attack. $39 billion in a day. Country stock index had one of the worst days in history. It was down 45%. That was as of a few days ago. And then you saw Lukoil's Obliterates saw biggest decline, followed by Mordashov. I guess these are names of Russian oligarchs here. This is an interesting point that I wanted to share with you. The best time to start brain draining Russia was after Putin annexed Crimea in 2014. The second best time to start brain draining Russia is today. So let me show you this. This is actually in the National Review. It's a conservative outlet, but specifically the United States could, with a stroke of a pen, totally destroy the capacity of Russia to compete militarily or economically with us by offering a green card to any Russian with a technical degree who wishes to emigrate to the United States. Such a move would destroy Russia's technical capacity and greatly strengthen our own position against both the short-term threat from Russia and the longer-term challenge posed by China. That's an interesting point, and I have to admit, I've never thought of it before. But I guess, it was similar to what we did with Cuba. The idea with Cuba was if you're from Cuba and you step foot on the U.S., you immediately get citizenship. And this is a similar idea, although I guess they're saying it's a little more quote-unquote merit-based. So if you're an expert in some field, if you're, somebody with a tremendous amount of skills, then, you get in and you are immediately an American citizen. Breaking news, the EU will freeze the assets of President Vladimir Putin of Russia and his foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, but will not impose a travel ban on them, two diplomats said. So this is one of the sanctions that Biden held off from in the initial, when Putin launched the initial quote-unquote peacekeeping mission. And now they're doing direct sanctions on Putin and his top official. So I'll walk you through all this stuff, guys, but just know some of this stuff is really good and makes a lot of sense, and then some of this stuff maybe goes overboard. And so I warned you that, particularly in regards to the SWIFT banking sanctions, if the world unleashes SWIFT banking sanctions on Russia, then Russia has declared, look, we're going to treat this as a declaration of war. And so this is the sort of tit-for-tat escalation that leads me worried for the future of humanity. It leaves me worried for the future of humanity because now you're really rolling the dice with nukes. And we are quite literally doing that, as I will show you a little later on, the new statement from Vladimir Putin. Let's continue. New, NATO has activated elements of the 40,000 troop NATO response force for the first time, warning at a press conference, quote, the Kremlin's objectives are not limited to Ukraine. So we need evidence of this. I mean, listen, I'm in not even 0.01% defending Putin here, because what he's doing is rank aggression and imperialism. But this is a statement that requires evidence. But the fact that we're now activating a 40,000 troop NATO response, oh my goodness. Because the Western perspective, we're going to say, look, this is purely defensive. And hey, look, I understand that. Russia just invaded Ukraine. So, of course, there's an argument. This is purely defensive. But from the perspective of the Russian government, they're going to look at this as, well, now they're mobilizing to do an offensive strike. And so all this sort of like miscommunication and fog of war is immeasurably dangerous. It's so scary. The Spectator Index says, breaking. The UN Security Council resolution condemning Russia for invasion of Ukraine fails due to Russian veto. China abstains. And then Glenn Greenwald adds here, India and the close U.S. ally UAE also abstained. So you're going to see here, early on, there were some people who were hesitant about what to do. There were some countries that were like, look, we don't want to go full SWIFT banking sanctions because they have deep ties with the Russian economy. But then over time, the dominoes started falling one by one. And then eventually, they came to an agreement. So, but in terms of condemning the war at the UN, Russia has veto power, just like the U.S. does, and so they just vetoed it. And obviously, you could see here, some others either abstained or sort of tacitly took Russia's side as well. Russian President Putin calls on Ukrainian army to overthrow leadership in Kyiv in televised address. Jesus Christ. So, now at the same time this is going on, there's also calls for diplomacy and some nominal agreements for diplomacy. We'll get to it later, but Putin says, let's meet in Belarus to talk about a settlement, talk about some sort of negotiated agreement. Zelensky says, I'm not going to Belarus because Belarus is an ally of Russia, so how do they know it's not a setup where they'll just kill him or capture him or whatever? And so there's a counterproposal on the table that we'll talk about. Russian forces have captured the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in one of the most dangerous threats to Europe right now. So, of course, Chernobyl was the site of that very famous nuclear disaster. And it's a ticking time bomb. It's a dangerous thing. If you destroy the structure that's keeping in the radiation, that is devastating for all of Europe. All of Europe. So I guess this is sort of like a veiled threat of sorts that Russia took this over. Russia does not recognize Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights, which are part of Syria. Polyansky called out Israel on using the word Tel Aviv, which indicates Russia does not recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, but as a Palestinian city. So this is, classic. This is what we told you was going to happen. What Russia is doing is throwing the hypocrisy of certain countries right back in their face. They're doing it to the U.S., they're doing it to Israel. For Israel to come out and be like, Russia's now illegally occupying territory. Russia's going to be like, seriously? You guys are like the kings of that. That's your whole thing, is doing that. And so this is why international law matters and consistency matters. And this is why if you're an anti-imperialist in the West, like, we've always been consistent on demanding that the U.S. and Israel and our allies follow international law. And not just for the sake of we should do it as a matter of principle, which we should, but also for the sake of when you lay the precedent that you could just violate it, then other countries are going to violate it. And they're going to be like, well, it doesn't really count because it didn't count when you did it, so it's not going to count when we do it. So, that's where we are right now, and that's a devastating development. Let's continue. One of Russia's closest allies denies request for troops. Kazakhstan, one of Russia's closest allies and southern neighbor, is denying a request for its troops to join the offensive in Ukraine, officials said Friday. Additionally, the former Soviet Republic said it is not recognizing the Russia-created breakaway republics upheld by Russia's president, Vladimir Putin, as a pretext for its aggression in Ukraine. Despite ceasefire accords covering the disputed land, Putin on Monday declared Russia's recognition of Luhansk People's Republic and the Donetsk People's Republic as independent states. The surprising development from a traditional ally of Russia has the support of the United States. Quote, we welcome Kazakhstan's announcement that they will not recognize the LPR and DPR. So the reason this is indicative of the wall is breaking. I don't know if that's the dam is breaking. I don't know the right way to say that, but all of Russia's top allies, the rats are fleeing the ship. They're like, oh boy, this is worse than we thought. And so now they're trying to save face. Hungary did the exact same thing. And that was surprising to many people, including me. Again, Russia's top allies are like, I don't know about all this. Okay, let's continue. Do Russian grievances about NATO justify it invading Ukraine? No, 74%. Yes, 26%. See, this is really interesting. The narrative that had been built over the years, believed by many people, including me, was this idea that, like, look, Russia feels totally under threat by NATO because it keeps expanding to their border. And how would we feel if Russia had a military alliance with Mexico and Canada and they were doing drills right on our border? Of course we would say that's offensive. Now, there's still a grain of truth in that. But the fact of the matter is, with all these recent developments and with Putin's own words, we know that it's not just about NATO. He also has flat-out imperial ambitions. I mean, he basically said it in his hour-long speech. And so, but even if you grant, hey, the NATO thing is a problem, does that justify invading a sovereign country? Well, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And the numbers on that are overwhelming. All right, more. Did COVID send Putin mad? Neuropsychologist explains how Russian leader could have become detached from reality. Look, this is purely speculative. I'm not sure I agree with it at all. I just wanted to show you the headline because it's food for thought. But it gets to the question of why did Putin do it now? Why, of all the times, did he decide to do it now? And, part of the answer to that question is, well, he did it in Georgia in 2008. He did it in Crimea in 2014. So, who knows? Why did he do those things then? Well, one of them at least had to do with an invitation into NATO, which he said is a red line. Another one, the one in Crimea, I've since come across more information on that. There was a tremendous amount of natural gas that was found just off the coast of Crimea in the Black Sea. And right after that is when Putin decided, this is ours again. So that's another potential answer to the question. This is all speculative, but this is what some people are saying in response to what Putin is doing. I'm not convinced on it, but I just wanted to show you some of the speculation. BNO News says, breaking, Germany agrees to send 1,000 anti-tank weapons and 500 Stinger missiles to help Ukraine. The reason why this is important is Germany is one of Russia's top allies in terms of economic ties. And so, again, they're losing people who were, on paper, not supposed to go down this path and losing them in a very clear way. Russian vodka being removed from shelves in U.S. and Canada. So, okay, I'm going to do a whole separate segment on this, the most brain-dead responses and the most brain-dead takes on Russia and Ukraine. But this is one of them. What the hell does Russian vodka, some random Russian company, run by some random Russian dude, or woman. What the hell does that have to do with what Vladimir Putin is doing? You have no idea what the politics are of the people who work at this Russian vodka company. So this is a sort of overreaction that we're used to in the West, which is totally unfair and just heightens tensions. So I think this is really, really, really stupid. So nobody can use any, Russian products. Like all Russians need to be condemned as a result of what Putin's doing. I just showed you the protesters who are heroes. They're Russian. So are you seriously going to blame them? Sorry for the phone in the background here. Like I said, I just woke up and I'm sort of scrapping stuff together here because this is an emergency segment. Let's continue. Russia restricts Twitter, Facebook during Ukraine attack. Look, authoritarian governments do authoritarian things. This is one of them. Arresting protesters by the thousands, that's authoritarianism. Restricting, free speech online, that's authoritarianism. I'm critical of it when anybody, as you guys know, because you've seen my 1,000 segments on it, I'm critical of any sort of crackdowns on free speech and free expression on social media. And this is Russia doing it in the middle of their invasion of Ukraine. It's incredibly nefarious. In Washington, unidentified people smashed the Russian restaurant Russia House, broke the windows, and tore off the Russian flag. Again, look, there's no other word for this. This is bigotry. This is xenophobia. This is like, again, all Russians are to blame for the actions of Vladimir Putin, which is absurd. All Americans were not to blame for George W. Bush illegally invading Iraq and killing hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians. So let's be reasonable about all this stuff. Gravel Institute says, yesterday, all four of these stocks, General Dynamics, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, and Raytheon, hit their 52-week high. Imagine the kind of person who interprets war deaths as portfolio gains. Then you can see the charts here. Astounding. There's one group of people who is very happy about the world being on the brink of World War III. And it is all of the so-called defense contractors, really they're offense contractors, the military-industrial complex. There's so much focus on blocking Russia from SWIFT. The vow today to block the Russian central bank from its reserves is almost certainly far more damaging to Moscow. This is a very big deal. Look, I'm not an expert on sanctions, but it seems to me like some of the sanctions that they're rolling out now are going to hurt Russian civilians, which is something I'm 100% against. I'm in favor of the toughest sanctions you could possibly do that would harm Putin and the oligarchs. Because it's the government, and it's Vladimir Putin, who's to blame for what's going on here. So, I'm not a sanctions expert. Maybe one of you out there is, and you'll know more details about this than I know. But blocking Putin's assets is like, hell yeah, brother. But anything that might hurt the Russian people, I think that goes too far. But that's what we're doing now. The vow today is to block the Russian central bank from its reserves. It's hard to see how, you wouldn't get another response from Russia after this. I think that this is going to be viewed as a tit-for-tat escalation, and again, we're playing with fire here, man. Breaking, the US, EU, and UK have agreed to block selected Russian banks from the SWIFT global financial messaging system and to impose restrictions on its central bank in retaliation for its invasion of Ukraine. So, there are parts of SWIFT that are being rolled out. Everything that I've seen on it seems to indicate that there are like some tiny loopholes that are going to be there. I don't know the nature of those loopholes. I don't know just how crushing these sanctions are, but a lot of the big daddy sanctions are being broken out now. So, there you have it. And remember, they said they would take this as a declaration of war, which is why maybe we're getting the update that I'm going to give you shortly when we get to the headline. Former top official at Russia's central bank. There's going to be a catastrophe on the Russian currency market on Monday. Again, as of 2 days ago, the Russian stock market fell 45%. 45%. So what's going to happen from here? It looks like the complete and utter implosion of the entire Russian economy. Russian lawmaker Mikhail Matveyev, who voted to recognize Donetsk and Luhansk, calls for an immediate end to attack on Ukraine. I voted for Russia to become a shield, not for Kyiv to be bombed. This is fascinating, guys. This is fascinating because a lot of even the hawkish lawmakers in Russia, Russian nationalist lawmakers, even they apparently thought, to some extent, we're just going to take the separatist regions. We're just going to take the separatist regions. They probably even thought we're just going to take the separatist-held separatist regions. So not even all of Donetsk and Luhansk, because some of that's controlled by the Ukrainian military. They probably thought, look, we're just going to annex like a tiny part of the country, similar to what happened in Crimea in 2014. That's not what happened. Russia did a full-scale invasion. And so a lot of the hawkish lawmakers in Russia are like, I don't know about this, dog. This is going way too far. And it shows me that there's even in Russia, there's a lot of blaming of Vladimir Putin, even for like the sanctions packages, which are about to be unleashed on Russia. Very, very interesting development. And that does not bode well for Vladimir Putin. Breaking. Saudi and UAE fighter jets are bombing Sana'a International Airport in Yemen. So the West, when nobody's looking, and Saudi Arabia, when nobody's looking, are like, look, everybody's focused on Ukraine. Let's unleash our own bombings on these various countries. The U.S. is bombed in Somalia as well. So it's sort of like a fog of war thing here, or even like a shock doctrine thing. When everybody's attention is elsewhere, it's like you just act. I guess shock doctrine is technically different, but nobody's paying attention, so it's like, okay, we can get away with doing the things that we've wanted to do. And of course, remember, there is a genocide currently going on in Yemen that we are aiding and abetting. We are aiding the Saudi government committing a genocide, blockading the country, not allowing in food and medicine. Women and children are dying. They've bombed mosques and hospitals and open-air markets. So this needs to be condemned just as vociferously as we're condemning the illegal invasion of Ukraine. And unfortunately, again, there's plenty of Western hypocrisy here. Now, I don't like it when people use this as whataboutism. And I've seen a lot of that, like, oh, we're only going to talk about this situation in Yemen to do whataboutism and deflect from the crime that is the invasion of Ukraine. I don't like that at all. I think the reality is you should be condemning both at the top of your lungs because both are illegal, immoral, unethical, wrong actions. So, but just so you know, this is what's going on as there's a lot of understandable panic over what's happening in Ukraine. UN, at least 240 civilian casualties in Russian bombardment of Ukraine. So this number might be a touch outdated. It might be more than this now. But at the very least, 240 civilian Ukrainian casualties in Russian bombardment of Ukraine. And remember, they're attacking all across the country. And they lied and said, oh, we're only going after, military equipment and stuff like that. Well, you failed. You missed. I don't know if it was on purpose or not. I don't care. Either way, it's something that you should condemn because innocent people are losing their lives. They did nothing wrong. These are moms, dads, sons, daughters. These are regular people. And they're being killed by Russian aggression. Continue. Breaking. Finland closes one of the last remaining gateways to Europe for Russian planes. Again, this is a fascinating development. This is, all these countries are just shutting their airspace to Russia. And I guess this includes, civilian flights. I don't know if this is a good response because there are plenty of good people who are going to want to flee Russia and get out of there. So I don't know if this is appropriate, but this shows that there's more of a united global response than perhaps there was previously. Ukraine obliterates Chechen Special Forces column with 56 tanks outside Kyiv and kills top general. So one of Putin's top allies, a Chechen general, has been killed. And there's a mighty resistance happening in Ukraine. The government has issued guns to basically anybody who wants to defend Ukraine in Ukraine. President Vladimir Putin has ordered Russian nuclear deterrent forces on alert amid tensions with the West over Ukraine. This is the full thing, guys. I cannot overstate how terrifying this is. So, Vladimir Putin is saying, look, we see all the sanctions that you're unleashing on us. Of course, he is going to think it's overkill. I'm sure he had contingency plans to deal with some of these sanctions. I'm not sure he expected it to be as vociferous as it has been to this point. But now he's saying, all right, well, the nukes might be in the air at some point soon. We're on high alert. We're going to use our, quote, nuclear deterrent forces. We're going to put them on high alert. By the way, there is no such thing as like a nuclear deterrent. There is no such thing as like, well, this is sort of defensive. No, nukes should be off the table, full stop. Because if anybody unleashes nukes, then there's a retaliatory nuclear strike, and it literally is just like the end of the world and the end of human civilization. And now there's talk about, well, it's on the table. If I told you there was even going to be a 1% or 2% chance of a nuclear war, how would you react? You'd be terrified, right? Well, I don't know what the percentage is, but it might be as high as 5%, 10%. That is not something I want to roll the dice with. That is not something I want to roll the dice with at all. But here we are. Now, again, it's a consistent theme you've heard me talk about. Further evidence this is not just about NATO. Threatening nuclear annihilation of innocent civilians in various places across the globe. That's all because, you were defensive over NATO? My ass cheeks, that's the only reason. Of course it's not. Of course it's not. And that's abundantly clear at this point. All right, let's continue. Still have more for you. Israel offers to mediate and broker ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. So they're getting involved, and it's basically like the only Western-aligned country that still, has a line of communication open. A number of Russian banks have announced their participation in China's KIPS. I don't know how they want to pronounce that system. This means that who want to buy Russian oil have to pay in RMB. SWIFT is not required for the settlement among KIPS internal members. So this is basically what this means is if Russia is being cut out of the SWIFT banking system, then China is offering their banking system to Russia. See, this is, remember how I alluded to a number of times in previous segments, secret deals behind the scenes between Russia and China, which is probably one of the reasons why Putin did this invasion, because behind the scenes he talked to his top allies like India and China, and there were contingency plans. So if the West unleashes crippling sanctions, then China swoops in to try to save the day a little bit and shore up the Russian economy. That appears to be exactly what this is. So I sort of think this is vindication of my theory that there was a secret deal between China and Russia. And again, one of the other reasons why they would have this deal is because if China is going to abstain, or at least not come out actively against Russia taking Ukraine, then Russia will reciprocate that if and when China takes Taiwan. So you have like a stalemate with the veto power at the UN, and you effectively, they'll look at the world and say, well, what are you going to do about it? Okay, we took Taiwan. Okay, we took Ukraine. What are you going to do about it? You're going to do nothing about it. Maybe you'll do some sanctions, but we're here to help each other out anyway. So that's what this is. It appears like there was a secret deal between Russia and China. During a phone call with Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko, President Volodymyr Zelensky agreed that the Ukrainian delegation would meet with the Russian delegation without preconditions on the Ukrainian-Belarusian border near the Pripyat River. Okay, so fascinating, interesting. So this is, originally the offer was, Russia said, hey, meet me in Belarus. Zelensky, meet me in Belarus. Zelensky was like, hell no, because it could have been a trap. It could have been a setup. Now, apparently the negotiated deal is, well, let's meet on the border. And so, I don't know, it could still be a setup. I have no idea. We'll see. But hopefully something can get worked out. Because this has totally gotten out of hand. The demands from Russia at this point are, look, you have to remain a neutral country. You can't be part of NATO. That's number one. But then number two is disarm all of Ukraine. On thing number one, Putin's already getting what he wants. Ukraine is not going to be part of NATO. If Ukraine was part of NATO, there would already be a ground war with NATO, and the U.S. would already have boots on the ground. That's not happening at the moment. And Zelensky himself said it's stalled, his NATO bid, and it's a pipe dream for Ukraine to be part of NATO. So, okay, you win on that one, Vlad, but to disarm, for a country to disarm as they're being attacked in an aggressive imperialist way, that's not going to happen, nor should it happen. So, I mean, they could talk. I hope they come to some sort of solution, but there's going to have to be some more give here. And then I have this for you. Unconfirmed numbers on Russian losses from Ukraine's defense ministry. Take this with a grain of salt, because it's from one side of the war, okay? But here we have it from the Kyiv Independent. Russia's losses as of February 27th. 4,300 troops, 27 planes, 26 helicopters, 146 tanks, 49 artillery pieces, 706 armored personnel carriers, 1 BUK system, 4 Grad systems, 30 cars, 60 fuel tanks, 2 drones, 2 ships, and patrol boats. So, again, take this with a grain of salt, because it's from one side of the fight. In the same way that if Russia was like, here are our numbers, everybody would sort of raise an eyebrow and be like, I don't know about that. You should, I don't know about that for either one, but this gives you some sense of roughly the ballpark of where everything is at. And like I said, there's over 200 Ukrainian civilians that have been killed. So there you have it. there you have it. They're putting up a fierce resistance, but look, the fact of the matter is, the Russian military is way more powerful. They are way more powerful. And really, it's just a matter of time, man. Like, it's just a matter of time. If Russia keeps going to take Kyiv, it really is just a matter of time until they get it, because they're just so much more powerful. So, there's the numbers for you. I really hope that this thing gets de-escalated, man. I really do. Don't get me wrong. I think there absolutely needs to be another round of sanctions targeting the oligarchs, targeting Putin. Ukraine needs to be armed because they're under assault. I get all that. But at the same time, you fear that if the sanctions go overboard, if they overreact, then Russia is not going to sit there and take it. Nothing happens in a vacuum. Are there going to be massive cyber attacks against the United States now? Are there going to be some other consequences that we can't even conceive of at the moment? Just the fact that we're having a conversation about, we're on like high nuclear alert. This is, heart of the Cold War type stuff, guys. This is, back when kids were growing up in the U.S. and they had to do these nuclear drills during school where they hide under the fucking desk. That's where we are right now. And nobody should be happy about that fact. The line that you have to take, you need global unity, which we're close to. We're not all the way there, but, global unity against this invasion. And you need intelligent, targeted sanctions that deter without escalating. And I do just fear that, man, if it's not an escalation, it's surely being perceived as one from Russia. So, I mean, look, the other side of the coin, though, is it's possible that with the sanctions going overboard, that Putin might have a moment of like, these motherfuckers are crazy. I have no choice but to sort of give in a little more here. I don't know. I think it's unlikely. I think with that sort of an authoritarian personality, he's going to dig his heels in more. But I don't have a crystal ball, no pun intended. I can't read the future. Well, I do have a crystal ball, but that's in a different sense. I can't read the future. So I don't know. But I had to give you guys all the updates. By the way, there's going to be a totally separate segment that I'm going to do. As I mentioned before, the most brain-dead takes on Russia and Ukraine. Stay tuned for that. But the breaking, scary news today is Putin is effectively threatening nuclear war. Like, we're on high nuclear alert here. And so if that isn't a wake-up call, if that doesn't shake you out of complacency, if that doesn't make you wish for the proper Western response here, I don't know what will. Again, the answers are global solidarity against the Russian invasion, intelligent sanctions that deter without escalating, and also immediate negotiation and diplomacy to avert a worst-case scenario, which would be game, set, match on all of us.